to the bustling club, her heart raced with nervousness. The private area was dimly lit, filled with music and laughter. She carefully carried a tray of drinks, trying to maintain her composure. With a professional smile, she served everyone the drinks and turned around to leave, but someone called her out. "How may I help you, sir?" "Kitten, come sit with us. Let's have some fun," he said with a wink. She pursed her lips while his other friends laughed. "Sorry, sir, I have done my job. I must leave now," she said in a serious tone, filling everyone's gaze. "Who do you think you are to refuse me?" he said furiously and attempted to hold her hand. "With due respect, sir, please don't cross your limits." The guy stood furiously but stopped, seeing a figure behind Wine. "What's it, Leo? Let her go." His cold voice sent a shiver down his spine. Wine turned around and her eyes met a pair of dark orbs. He was standing close to her, so close that Wine could see her reflection in his eyes. His handsome features were enough to make anyone drool over him. Wine was staring at him with doe eyes and nervous expression. His dark aura trickled goosebumps over her skin. Them found her expressions cute. He subconsciously leaned towards her. "You may leave, little girl," he said in a soft and low tone. Every person who knew Them was shocked seeing him talking to a girl so softly. Wine blinked her eyes and lowered her gaze. Them moved aside while she strode out. He sat on his seat while everyone was still staring at him. "What?" His dark tone made them shiver. They all sat without a word, while Them's thoughts were drawn to Wine. His heart felt different, like never before after all these years. Time skipped. Wine came out of the club and glanced at her wristwatch. It was past 12 a.m. She looked around in search of Ivan, but he was nowhere. She slid out her phone, clutching the hem of her shirt, and dialed Ivan's number, but the call went unanswered. She anxiously made her way, feeling scared of her dark and empty surroundings. As soon as she took 2 steps forward, a tall figure appeared in front of her, making her startled. "Why are you all alone, little girl?" His voice was menacingly deep. "Move out of my way." She clutched her purse so tight that her fingers went white. "Don't you know it's dangerous out here at this hour?" He took a step closer to her while Wine took 2 steps backward. "That's a part of my job." Her voice came out as whisper. "Come with me, I will drop you." She shook her head in denial. "Why do you think I will go with you? I don't even know you," she said sharply this time. Them was amused. "It's all right. It just takes a few minutes to know someone." He shrugged his shoulders. "Listen, mister, you helped me in there. For that I am thankful. But now you are taking advantage of it." Then stepped closer to her. His dark gaze made her tremble. As she stepped backward, she stumbled on a stone. "Watch out!" He swiftly held her by the arms and pulled her towards him. Wine crashed onto his chest. Them's heart skipped a beat, seeing her delicate features this close. He stared at her without blinking and subconsciously reached out his hand to her face. He caressed her cheek with the back of his hand. Wine trembled under his touch. His gaze was filled with affection and fondness. He was so lost that he couldn't even notice Wine's resistance until a voice broke its trance. "Wine, what the hell are you doing?" His voice was filled with anger. Them's grasp loosened and Wine rushed to Ivan's side. "Ivan, you are here," she said with a hint of relief while Ivan was busy glaring at Them. "Who is he, Wine? Why was he holding you like that?" he asked sternly. Them raised his right brow. "I don't know, he just held me in there and now I was about to fall, so he held me," she said embarrassingly and reached out to hold his hand, but Ivan jerked it. "That was how you were repaying. And how do I believe you don't know him?" Them clenched his fist, holding an urge to blow his brain with the bullet. "Don't you trust me, Ivan?" she asked with teary eyes. Ivan pursed his lips. "Stop being over dramatic, kiddo. She doesn't know me, and neither do I know her. I just helped her out," Them said lazily. "I'm not a kid. You helped my girlfriend. I'm grateful for that. But don't come near her again," he said, holding Wine's hand firmly. Them clenched his chest, staring at their hands with a dark gaze. "This is how you protect her, making her wait on the road in the middle of the night." He fixed his gaze on Ivan, who felt chills down his spine. "That's none of your business." Wine tugged onto his hand. "Let's go," she mumbled, glancing at Them. Ivan dragged her away while Them was staring at their retreating figures. He wasn't going to give up on her, not after knowing she made him feel so many beautiful emotions. Few days later, since that night, Wayne has been searching for another job. Since she had begun working in the club, Ivan was against it. This was frustrating her. It's just been a month since they have been dating and Ivan is already suspecting her. Now she was sitting beside her mom's unconscious figure and holding her cold hand. Mom, please wake up. I and Dad need you. Dad is with Aunt. I want to take care of him, but I can't do it alone. She held back her tears. The doctor entered, grabbing her attention. Doctor, is there any improvement? She asked hopefully. I won't lie to you, Wayne. There's no improvement in your mother's health. Does that mean she will never wake up? She asked worriedly. She may wake up, we can hope for good. She just nodded, biting her lips. Then I'll go and see the bill. She walked out, heading to the reception and asked the receptionist for the bill. Her phone rang, grabbing her attention. She went to the corner and attended the call. Dad, Wayne, how is your mom? Did you see her? What did the doctor say? He asked as soon as she answered the call. She is fine, Dad. Her voice broke. How are you? Don't worry about me. Take care of yourself and eat well. Don't be hard on yourself. He spoke softly. She tried hard to hold back her tears. Yes, Dad. I'll come to see you soon, she said in a low tone and soon declined the call. Tears rolled down her eyes while a notification popped up. I'm sorry, Wayne, I wronged you. Please talk to me. It was from Ivan. She let out a sigh and stared at the bill in her hands. Why are you crying? Thames' deep voice made her flinch. Are you stalking me? She asked with a frown. I don't have to stalk you. I can get you with a snap of my fingers, he said in a low voice and wiped her tears. Wayne slapped away his hand. Don't touch me. What is your problem? Why do you show up in front of me every time? She whispered and looked around to see if anyone was seeing them, but the whole hospital was surrounded by his guards. It's coincidental. I want you, and I guess God also wants us to be together. He squinted towards her. Wayne's heartbeat raised wildly. You're out of your mind. Just look at your age. Don't you have any shame? I'm like a younger sister to you. Sam grabbed her jaw in a blink of an eye, taking her off guard. Never did anyone dare to insult him like this. The more he was being gentle with her, the more she was getting on his nerves. I'm going easy on you because I like you and want you to be with me. Don't ever say you are like sister to me. He moved closer, their breaths mingled. I have a boyfriend, she muttered timidly. He released her jaw with a jerk. A boyfriend who doesn't trust you and is being a jerk to you. His eyes even darkened, making it hard to look into his eyes. She bit her lower lip. You're crazy, she whispered and walked past him while Thames stared at her retreating figure. Next day, Wayne nervously walked into the lavish mansion with wide eyes. The whole mansion was surrounded by guards. Each corner of the mansion spoke of elegance and grandeur, captivating all who entered its halls. This way, ma'am. The maid's voice broke the chains of her thoughts. Wayne nodded and followed her. The maid stopped in front of a large door and pushed it open. As they entered, the maid bowed in front of the man seated. Sir, this is Miss Wayne. He glanced at Wayne and gestured for the maid to go. She walked out, closing the door behind. Please have a seat, Miss Wayne, he said with a soft smile. Wayne managed a smile and sat on the chair. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Joseph. Nice to meet you, Mr. Joseph. So you're here for a job? Wayne eagerly nodded. Well, we want a caretaker for our grandma, but I think you're too young for that. No, sir, believe me, I can do it. I will take good care of your grandma. He pressed his lips into a thin line. Think once more because you have to sign the contract. You won't be able to quit until 3 months. You must live here and look after grandma. The salary is quite high, but in case you want to quit, you must pay us double 3 months' salary, which is a great amount, he said thoughtfully, leaning against the chair. Wayne thought for a while. It was not a bad idea. Instead, she wouldn't have to do extra jobs in clubs and cafes. Her mother's medical expenses would be covered as well. I am ready for it, sir. I can do it, she said in a determined tone. How would you manage your studies? He asked with raised brows. Her face fell. I am currently on leave and I can manage it. That's not a big issue. He nodded and slid the file in front of her. This is the contract you must sign, but while doing your job, You must be extra careful because my brother is a really scary guy and your job starts from this hour. Don't worry about your belongings and all. I'll send you with the driver to shift your belongings here. She nodded and signed the contract without a second thought. What is compelling you to do all this at this age? He said, flipping through the file. Wine felt a lump forming in her throat. My dad is paralyzed and my mom has been in a coma for the past 1 year. I'm doing this for them, she said in a low tone. I'm sorry. He fixed his gaze on her gloomy face. You're really brave and strong, little girl, he said with a smile while the word little girl reminded her of him, making her shudder. At night, Wine had been quite comfortable here. Every person here is beyond nice, including the guards. Wine has been enjoying Grandma's company. Grandma had been complaining about her grandson the whole day. Now Wine was drowned in her thoughts, holding the cup of hot milk, and made her way to Grandma's room. She knocked on the door and entered. Here she is, Grandma said to the person seated beside her with a warm smile. Wine handed the cup of milk to Grandma and turned to face the person, her eyes widened, seeing Them. A wave of surprise flashed in Them's eyes. Wine, this is Them, my grandson, she said, patting his shoulder. Wine gulped and managed to pass Grandma a smile while Them's dark gaze was fixed on her. Then I'll go freshen up, Grandma, he said and stood. Good night, he kissed her on the forehead and walked out, not forgetting to catch the glimpse of Wine's nervous face. I think you should also sleep, Wine. You have been looking after me the whole day. She held Wine's hands, breaking her trance. I'm fine, I'll give you a massage and sleep, she said in a low tone. Grandma nodded, sipping on the milk. After giving Grandma a massage and making sure she was asleep, Wine picked up her phone and made her way towards her bedroom. She entered her bedroom and was about to call Ivan when she heard someone yelping in pain. She went towards the window and opened it. There was Them and a few of his guards beating a guy. Wine placed her palm on her mouth to stop her scream. Them gestured for his guards. He began cutting off the guy's fingers. Wine slid down the window. Her body was trembling vigorously. She sat there hugging her knees while tears rolled down her eyes. She didn't know how much time had passed since she was sitting there until the door opened and closed. She jumped, seeing Them coming towards her. What happened, little girl? His deep voice made her shiver. Why are you crying? He asked, crouching down to her and cupping her fist gently. Don't touch me, you're a criminal, she said with disgust. Them chuckled, moving away his hands. I'm the king of the underworld. He squinted towards her. I don't want to work here anymore, she whispered, wiping her face. Did you forget the contract you had signed this morning? Besides, my grandma likes you a lot. I won't let you leave, he said, wrapping his finger around her hair strand, which was brushing against her cheek. You did this on purpose, didn't you? She mumbled with disbelief. I promise, sweetheart, this is coincidence. I don't know who the new caretaker was until I saw you. Guess what? We are fitted to each other. She shook her head in denial. You're lying, this was all a trap. She hissed at him, then smiled, sniffing her hair and closed his eyes. I don't care what you think. He opened his eyes, fixing his gaze on her. His eyes were so beautiful that one could drown, but one felt terrified. You have to accompany me to a party after a few days. Do I look like a fool to you? Sam cut her off. Your mom is in hospital room number 483. Your dad is with his sister, but I won't do anything to them. Instead, your boyfriend Ivan. I swear I feel like skinning him alive when he touches you or looks at you. His gaze darkened while his eyes turned bloodshot red. You won't do anything to any of them or Ivan, she cried. He stared dead into her eyes. You care too much about him, don't you? She bit her lips. What do you want from me? Why are you not leaving me? I want you because I love you. I'm not that bad. Stay with me and you'll eventually know me. I have never been so open towards any girl before. He spoke softly, staring at her with tenderness. That can never happen. His expression darkened. You're going to accompany me if you want that so-called boyfriend of yours safe and sound, he muttered and walked out. Time skip. It's been more than 10 days since Wine worked in Kim's mansion. For a few days, Wine was beyond terrified. Then didn't show up in front of her again, which caused her to feel at ease somewhat. Grandma also talked to her and said not to be scared. 𝐒𝐤 just seemed scary. He has a beautiful heart. One assumed 𝐒𝐤 must have told her something. She talked to Ivan a few times but didn't tell him where she was. She just told him that she quit her job in the club and restaurant. Now 𝐒𝐤 was dressed up in a coral colorful length gown that 𝐒𝐤 had bought for her. The beautician did her makeup and hair. She was sitting on the stool in front of the vanity table staring at her reflection. She was looking beautiful, but there wasn't any glimmer in her eyes. 𝐒𝐤 didn't notice when 𝐒𝐤 entered the room until she flinched seeing his reflection behind her. He placed his hands on her shoulders and squinted towards her. How could you look so breathtakingly beautiful? He mumbled in a state of trance. His heart skipped several beats. He had an urge to hide her under his wings, where only he could see her. 𝐒𝐤 turned around and looked up to him. 𝐒𝐤 spontaneously leaned and kissed her on the lips, taking her off guard. 𝐒𝐤 gasped and moved away. What the hell do you think you are doing? She hissed, having an urge to kill him, then shook his head and pursed his lips into a thin line. This was not intentional. He calmed himself and ignored her question. Let's go, we'll be late. He reached out to hold her hand. 𝐿 resisted but stopped after receiving a glare from him. She followed him to the car. The driver drove them to the venue. Link your arm with mine. He spoke as soon as they arrived. 𝐿 stood still, then let out a sigh and wrapped her hand around his elbow. Walk quietly, he said in a serious tone, showing his hands into his pockets. Everyone greeted them way too respectfully. 𝐿 was looking around while 𝐒𝐤 was busy talking with one of the guys when she heard a familiar voice. Sir, ma'am. He froze as soon as he saw 𝐿. His eyes traveled to her arm, which was linked with 𝐒𝐤's. 𝐿 subconsciously tightened her grasp around his arm, seeing the disbelief in Ivan's eyes. 𝐒𝐤 averted his gaze to Ivan and glanced at 𝐿. We don't want. He dismissed him. Ivan barely nodded and walked away. 𝐿 released 𝐒𝐤's arm before he could react. She walked behind Ivan to the changing room. She reluctantly opened the door and entered. Ivan was sitting, holding his head, while the whole room was empty. Ivan, he sharply turned towards her. Are you out of your mind? What are you doing here? He said through gritted teeth and marched towards her. Ivan, listen to me, I just want to. He interrupted her, pinning her against the wall. Just shut up. He was the reason you were making excuses to meet me. I didn't know you were so greedy. I can give you nothing because I can be a merry waiter while he's wealthy. You must have sold your body to him. You're hurting me, Ivan, she said through teary eyes, trying to get out of his hold. He tightened his grip instead. This is nothing compared to the pain you caused me, he hissed at her. Let go of me, I came just to explain. But here you don't have a bit of trust in me. It's not just this day, but from the very beginning. You have known me for 4 years, but since we got into this relationship, you have lost trust in me, or I guess you never had. Tears rolled down her face. Ivan clenched his jaw. You know what? Let's end this. I have been hanging into it thinking you would change, but I just realized I was holding on to nothing. Did you ever treat me well? Did ever a day pass when you didn't suspect me? She pushed him and ran out of there until her high heels caused her to trip and sprain her ankle. Everyone was too immersed in their business to notice her. What happened? He held her and squatted to take a look at her ankle. Everyone who saw him like this were beyond shock. 𝐿 never bowed his head in front of anyone, let alone just for a girl. Everyone's attention drew towards them. You sprained your ankle. He stood wiping her tears and scooped her in his arms while wiggled in his embrace. Let go of me, what do you want from me? Just get lost from my life. She yelled, hitting him on the shoulders and chest. 𝐿 clenched his jaw as murmurs erupted in the hall. He walked out followed by his guards while 𝐿 was still ranting. Would you just shut up? I have respect in my circle and I won't let you crash it just for that stupid kid. He sat her in the car and leaned towards her. Well, then you're a mature person and act like one. Get out of my life because I can't stand the sight of you. Just for a minute more. He stared at her for a while and slammed the door, sitting from the other side of the car. Few days later, Since that day, it's been almost a week. 𝐿's ankle had sprained badly. 𝐒𝐤 didn't show up in front of her again. He had a maid to take care of 𝐿 until her sprain recovered. He also hired some other caretaker for Grandma and terminated the contract with 𝐿. He paid her 3 months' salary. 𝐿 wanted to just take half of a few days that she worked and return the remaining amount, but 𝐒𝐤 was nowhere to be seen. She even requested the maids to tell him she wanted to see him, but they said he was busy. 𝐿 was remorseful for lashing out on 𝐒𝐤. She also wanted to apologize to him. After her ankle healed, the driver drove her to her aunt's house. Now 𝐿 and her dad came to see her mother. She left her dad in the ward and went to talk to the doctor when her eyes caught a familiar figure. 𝐒𝐤, she whispered and rushed towards him. 𝐒𝐤, she held him by the wrist. 𝐒𝐤 glanced at her with a frown. Excuse me, he released his hand from her grip. 𝐒𝐤, are you here for Grandma's checkup? I want to see her, she said desperately. It's Mr. Kim, and I don't allow strangers near my loved ones. He spoke indifferently and turned around to leave. His cold eyes made her shiver. Mr. Kim, I want to apologize to you. I'm sorry I shouldn't have lashed out on you. She held his hand once more. Firstly, stop touching you. She embarrassingly released his arm. Secondly, you don't have to apologize for anything because that was all my fault. He said and turned around to leave. 𝐿 just stared at his retreating figure. 2 months later, 𝐿 resumed her studies in these past months. She often visits Grandma hoping to see 𝐒𝐤. Instead, she meets Joseph. She didn't hear anything from 𝐿, neither was she interested. She subconsciously compared 𝐿 and 𝐒𝐤. Although she had interacted with 𝐒𝐤 just a few times, he had always treated her gently, unlike 𝐿. Now she was lying on the bed, lost in her thoughts. She was surrounded by loneliness and emptiness. This was the only reason she agreed to be with 𝐿. Her thoughts wandered to the accident that changed their life. If they didn't get into the accident, her mom wouldn't have been in a coma and her dad wouldn't have been paralyzed. Tears pooled in her eyes. Life had exhausted her a lot. She was drowning in debt and her part-time jobs didn't pay her well. Even though Grandma had offered her help several times, she refused. A creak sound from the living room pulled her out of her reverie. 𝐿 got out of the bed with a frown. As soon as she walked to the living room, the main door burst open, making her flinch. A group of men entered. 𝐿 recognized one of the guys. He was the same in the club where she met 𝐿 for the first time. 𝐼𝐢𝐿, it's you, he said with a devilish smirk, stepping towards her. 𝐿's heart sank. What are you doing here? Get out of my house. She spoke, trying hard to appear calm. They chuckled, sitting on the couch. Your uncle took that from me and ran away, leaving your address. What? She barely whispered. But I don't have any money. He smiled and stood. It's all right. He stood closer to her while 𝐿 was blocked by the wall behind her. You have this pretty body to pay. As he said, he felt a hard slap on his face. You know what you're saying? She yelled at him. Leo clenched his jaw and grabbed her by the hair. This impulsive nature of yours will make you lose everything. She spit on his face only to earn 2 slaps in the row from him. She wept, tears flowing from her face. Leo tore off her shirt and pushed her onto the ground. 𝐿 crawled back, shaking her head in denial. He hovered over her. She pushed him while hitting him, constantly putting men. Leo leaned towards her neck. 𝐿 felt her world crumple until she heard a growl. Get off her. Leo flinched and moved back with wide eyes filled with dread. His men were taken down by 𝐿's men. 𝐿 moved forward and kicked him on the stomach. Everyone out, he roared, seeing 𝐿's condition, who was still lying on the floor, motionless. He held Leo by the hair and began hitting his head on the floor. 𝐿 threw him out and ordered the guards to take him to his red cell. He then came towards 𝐿 and covered her with his coat. He helped her sit. 𝐿 hit her cheek. His heart ached at the sight of her. She stared at him with dreadful eyes. He's gone, you're safe. Her eyes shimmered with tears and they slowly rolled down her eyes. 𝐿 enveloped her in a warm hug, holding her tightly. 𝐿 completely broke into loud sobs. Then gently stroked her disheveled hair. Don't cry, you're safe, he mumbled. She held tightly onto him. I'm tired. I don't know what to do anymore. I want to stay with my parents. Feel their warmth, she said between sobs. Tom's heart clutched. He wanted to hide her in his embrace and disappear. He cupped her face and tilted her face upwards. Leave everything to me. But you hate me, she whispered. I was just angry, but believe me, I have been by your side all this while. That's why I arrived here almost on time, just now. She stared at him for a while and placed her head on his chest exhaustedly. Let's be friends. I'll take you out of this mess. I promise I'll make you the happiest girl. She nodded, snuggling into his chest. Then felt warmth spreading through his body. He held her until she was asleep. He kissed her crown and scooped her in his arms. 5 years later, during these 5 years, Wine felt at home with him, Grandma and Joseph. Wine assumed her job as Grandma's caretaker as she didn't want to be a burden to them. Her mom was still in a coma. Tim was a great friend to Wine. She didn't realize how she felt for him. She harbored her feelings for him and didn't let him know. She wasn't sure if he was still interested in her or not. 2 months ago, Wine graduated and now she returned from the job interview. You're home? She asked as soon as she entered and saw Tim pacing back and forth in the living room. He smiled faintly and moved closer to her. How was your interview? Wine threw her arms around him. It was good. I'll probably get this job, she said and pulled out. Where is Grandma and Joseph? In Grandma's room. Come, I have something for you. He held her hand and made his way towards Grandma's room while Wine followed him like a lost puppy. He entered the room followed by Wine. As soon as Wine's gaze landed on the familiar figure, she gasped. Mom, Dad, she whispered, staring at them with wide eyes. Mom, she glanced at him for confirmation. He nodded with a smile. Wine rushed towards her mom and embraced her in a tight hug. My girl has grown so much, she said with a smile and broke the hug. It's been so long, Mom, she said, wiping her tears, but they kept coming. I'm sorry you had to go through so much because of me. I'm also here. Wine chuckled through teary eyes and hugged her dad. When did Mom wake up? She asked, clinging to her dad just like she used to do when she was young. It's been 15 days or more, I guess. Really, why didn't you tell me earlier? She asked and stood straight. Tim wanted to surprise you. When I averted her gaze to Tim, he just shrugged his shoulders, shoving his hands into his pockets. Well, Mr. Kim, thank you so much for taking care of our daughter. Now it's time for us to take her back with us. A cloud of gloom settled over Tim, but he stopped, knowing no excuse can work. He pursed his lips into a thin line. You can take her, he avoided Wine's gaze. Excuse me, he said and walked out. Joseph followed suit. Few days later, it's been a few days since Wine moved out of the mansion. Tim immersed himself in work to stop his thoughts from drawing toward Wine. He didn't know how he would confess his feelings to her. Now he rushed to his cottage as Wine had sent him several messages to come to the cottage and help her. The cottage was bathed in darkness. Wine, he called her out but got no response. Wine, where are you? His heart thumped against his chest until the light switched on. Then looked around the decorations with confusion. Happy birthday. She came forward with the cake in her hands. Little girl, you scared me, he said, letting out a sigh of relief. Wine chuckled, placing the cake on the table. Let's cut the cake first, he nodded, stepping forward. You did all these decorations? He asked, stuffing the cake into her mouth. Yes, Joseph helped me. She spoke, munching the cake. Where is my gift then? He asked with raised brows, tugging the hair strands behind her ear. Wine gulped nervously. Why are you so nervous? Well, then close your eyes. He cocked his right brow. Come on, do it if you want your gift. He nodded and closed his eyes. There was silence for a good 2 minutes until Tim spoke. What's taking so long? I'm opening my eyes. Alright, you can open. He opened his eyes, hearing her nervous voice. His eyes landed on Wine, who was sitting on the floor on one knee while holding the ring box in front of him. Will you marry me? She said, taking him off guard. Then stared at her with shocked expression. No way, I'm hallucinating things, right? He thought and crouched down to her and stared at him with a racing heart. "It's okay if you don't want to," she said, pulling back her hand, but then held her hand and pulled her closer. "I haven't replied yet." He took the ring from her and slid it into her finger. "I'm going nuts to marry you, but I had to propose you." She smiled widely and encircled her arms around his neck, rubbing her nose on his neck. "It doesn't matter who proposed first," she whispered over his neck. He tightened his grasp around her and lifted her. He sat on the couch along with her, Wayne pulled out and cupped his face. "Thank you for everything," she whispered over his lips and leaned closer. She pressed her lips against his, then groaned, pulling her closer. Wayne pulled out, breathing heavily, and gently pressed her forehead against his, feeling their closeness. "I love you, my old man," she whispered with a mischievous smile, then rubbed his thumb over her lips. "I think we should get married tomorrow. I want to spend a bit more time with my parents." He let out a sigh. "Don't expect me to stay young until then," Wayne giggled, placing her head on his shoulder. "Even if your hair turned white and you wouldn't be able to walk, I will still choose you over everything." He gently stroked her hair. "You'll still be my little girl." She smiled. "I met 𝐒𝐿 today," she spoke after a while. Then honed in response. He apologized. They remained silent. "We both were wrong. We got into a relationship, but we weren't mature enough. But I still don't like him." Wayne chuckled and kissed him on the cheek. "I can't imagine an old man can be so cute. Old and cute, me." She nodded with a smile. "You have no idea how young I am." He scooped her in his arms and made his way towards the bedroom while Wayne's laughter erupted, making him smile.